Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to view Dandadan, Season 1, Episodes 1 through 4. Man, was this show, like, weird, interesting, just trying to go on and give me some familiar, but then also trying to do something a lot fun that I'm not used to seeing on anime, on shows, and what have you. So, let's get into this. Like, there's even at one point within these episodes somebody farts. So, man, I think you just desperately need to just tune in for that. Anyways, so if you like the supernatural and science fiction genre, they are smashing it both into this episode, or these episodes. We come to find if you like aliens, if you like ghost zombies and monsters, like, yeah, you're going to probably like this show. So, we make our way into finding a show that feels to me very much like Ben 10, but then also for live action people. I had gone on to see this movie called like 976 or 967 Evil that was directed by Robert Englund. And at some point, we have this nerdy bully character or bullied character that is to eventually go on and call this hotline to get demonic powers. And then eventually he goes on and starts wreaking havoc on all the people that had bullied him. In some ways, Dandadan is similar to that, but like without the whole like seeking revenge on the bullies and that kind of stuff. What happens within the story here is we have a girl named Momo who ends up breaking up with her boyfriend and is looking for the next guy. And coincidentally, Momo goes on and is to find this one guy just kind of on his own, and he's reading this alien book. So Momo goes on to protect Ken, and I know that he has his own name in this show, and it's not Ken, and if anything, he shouldn't have been called Ken here, but I'm doing it anyways, because I'm stubborn, because it's easy, because I don't want to butcher it. So, Momo goes on and protects Ken from bullies, and then walks off and thinks nothing of it, and Ken decides to pursue this girl, and they just start talking. The more and more they start talking, they kind of more just start arguing. And eventually they come to find what they like the most. That Momo is to believe in ghosts and supernatural things, and her grandmother's a medium, and Ken is to go on and like aliens. And so the further and further they start talking, and how neither one of them believes in their own kind of personal strange, then they decide to do the very old-fashioned thing, which is like, oh, well, you gotta spend the night at the haunted house, and and if you live, well then, you're gonna be the dopest kid around, right? Yeah. Anyways, so, yeah, there's nothing of positives to really come out of that. There is none. There never is. But anyways. But also, the whole school thing is kind of a very old, easy way to write in characters all the time. But yeah, also, this show was to kind of very much remind me of Mob Psycho 100. But I think Mob Psycho 100 is a lot more comedy, and it's a lot more funnier, and it's a lot more goofier. But it's kind of close to this. Because at some point, we do have Momo who has psychic powers. So it's kind of close. But, like, right now, she's not using, like, 100% of her brain. And all the unlimited things that could unlock. But eventually, we'll probably get there, right? So anyways, And so I kind of already spoiled what was to eventually happen to Momo. So, but back to our story here. So, Momo goes on and makes her way to this abandoned hospital, and we have Ken who makes his way to this abandoned tunnel. So, we come to find out that these characters are going into here and they have their cell phones and they're calling one another. And so we have Momo that's going to this abandoned hospital because it's a hotspot for alien abductions. And Ken is going into his tunnel because there is to be this turbo granny that is to be this ghost that haunts this tunnel. So they go both in these areas, and surefire enough, we have Ken that goes on and gets possessed by Turbo Granny, and we have Momo that ends up getting abducted by these aliens called Serpo. And my apologies, I know that's a mouthful of deliciousness to say. So Momo goes on to get abducted by the Serpicos, and eventually, because of Ken going on and getting possessed, he can be able to figure out a way to help out Momo to save her from her abduction, but then also Momo kind of rescues herself because eventually she is to have these dormant psychic abilities within inside of her that she eventually just unleashes all hell now that her life is on the line here. She, of course, is to have this risk that she'll go on and she'll be, what is the perfect word here? Taken advantage of? Uh, Forced intimacy is the way I have to be creative about it. I can't just say she has forced sex because maybe some ping will go on for YouTube. And I don't want to say the R word either because I feel that that word is disgusting. Um, and I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to say it ever in my life. So we have these two characters after these crazy experiences, and since Ken was willing to become a monster to protect Momo, Momo feels responsible to protect Ken from himself because of his curse. And Momo feels obligated to figure out how to have Ken become back to his own normal self. But while in doing that, these aliens just keep on coming for these two characters because they want their bananas, aka nethers, aka down belows, aka private parts. And so these aliens will seemingly not give up. Oh, while also the possessed being within inside, uh, of course, Ken here won't give up either about trying to get people's dongs and uh, and ripping them off people's bodies. And eventually we get where Momo is to start to control the possession and eventually start to be able to get to where Ken is to get different kind of personas out of this whole thing, where eventually we get to hear where he is to kind of be in this kind of bummer persona character where he's like, yeah, I feel like me but just a little sad. And so this bummer persona is to be like, man, I might die, but it's whatever. It's whatevs. I'm gonna just do this and so it's just kind of cool to just kind of get these kind of goofy, weird characters, and it'll be interesting to see like where they go with this if this is to be interesting to people. And I was to go on and just rather enjoy this weird, goofy thing. Also, if you coincidentally or just so happen to be Power Ranger fans coming into this also, if you guys had gone on to watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I know she was in a number of seasons anyways, but I'll go with specifically Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the early stuff, because a lot of people watch that. There is to be a voice here, and I'm not gonna tag Power Rangers in here. That's gonna be a waste of time anyways, because no one will understand why I tagged this. But the person who goes on and is Turbo Granny within the show is to also be Rita from Power Rangers. And I was like, oh my god, like, why does that voice sound so familiar? Because I had just gone on and watched a thing of Power Rangers. I'm like, why does this voice sound so familiar? Surefire enough, the same actress did the same freaking voice. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, so I'm hearing this Rita voice in more than one place. So that's kind of funny. It's like I just can't escape Power Rangers. But if anything, I'm like, whatever. Like, it's not like that voice is to be just so overused that I'm just like, oh, I can't take it anymore. No, it's fine. So, plus also it's good that she's getting work. So, congratulations for her. Anyways, so yeah, so with that said, I really enjoyed this piece. I hope people will enjoy it as well. I hope people want me to check it out more. Uh, I know that there's like 2 seasons of this thing. So yeah, so I hope it's gonna eventually get really interesting somewhere down the road. Uh, but if anything, if it just is to be this kind of one and done experience, it's like, oh well, like I had fun watching this. And eventually gets people to know about this project because people may have never heard of it before. But anyways, yeah. This show right now is conveniently on Netflix also. So it's just one of those easy things. You have Netflix already, or if you don't have Netflix, then you can go on and have uh, a mobile device like a tablet or a phone or something that probably has a Google Play Store. You can go on an app called Hanime, anime with an H, and then go on and download this app and be able to watch anime whatever you want. It seems to have an endless supply of stuff that's on there. Everything that I've searched in there, it eventually will come up. So, like, it feels like you have an endless option. You would just have to go into the dub section of the episodes and just be able to watch it in English there. So, DUB, dub. Anyways, so with that said, yeah, I think I just want to push on and go into spoilers because if anything, the further and further I go on and I talk about this, I might be just kind of cautious about like, well, I don't know what I've said already, or the further and further I go on and about this, um, I'm just kind of concerned about that I'll say something stupid or wrong and have to redo this whole thing over again and restart it all over again. Last bit of thing. So we also end up getting this grandmother character that really is like, okay, like this is kind of like a different kind of elderly character that is to be kind of an expert in her field. And like it was really cool to see the grandmother character just, I believe her name is Siki, like, or Siko. I hope that's how it's pronounced because I haven't heard it. I just call her grandma. Um, in my mind, I'm like, I don't know what her name is. So the grandmother goes on to face off against Turbo Granny, and she just annihilates her. Not completely wiping out, but it's just like, man, like, I am so impressed. I am just so, like, salivating with my being impressed by this woman. And also, like, it really does seem like they're trying to do something different for supernatural stuff. Yeah, you can go on and you can do the whole circle thing and have the person just not be able to leave that area. And they can talk about like the whole barrier spell things within this supernatural thing, which I'm like, oh yeah, I know all about barrier spells. That it's kind of like the whole vampire thing. It's like, well, hey, you have to invite them for them to come in, um, that kind of thing. But in this case, it's to be a barrier spell that kind of wards off evil spirits from just coming knocking at your door. And eventually, that whole barrier spell really comes into one of these episodes and really affects it. And I thought that was like a really cool idea. It's doing stuff with the supernatural that seems actually different. It doesn't seem like the same old thing that we've rinsed and repeat seen here. So I really like this show for being that, um, because it seems so cool to me, and refreshing and fun. And so that is my glowing recommendation of the show. If you've never seen it, go out of your way to check it out. Hopefully, you'll enjoy it also, or you might just get X number of minutes of your time just to have now been gone. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if you checked out Dandadan, or also if you were to go on and find any other kind of supernatural shows uh, that kind of fit the bill of this somewhat. Because I'm to go on and just try to find just stuff that's really interesting that I can just showcase on the channel. Like, I was ultimately going to go on and finish up Zom 100 because it seems that people were fairly interested in that anime, and um, like I did want to go on and finish it up. Like, so that'll be a thing that I will hopefully do next. Like, I just got just so interested in what the heck this was that it just was all consuming. And like, I gotta watch the show. I had to, and then I can just kind of move on and just kind of do another project, and then maybe come back to this if people are really interested, because I just want to see where this one goes. If it goes nowhere, then I'm like, okay, like at least I'll watch something fun once, and then I can just move on into some of the other anime projects that people may actually be more interested in. But either way, I had fun with this, so hopefully you'll check it out. With that said, I think it's that time to just push into spoiler territory and try to go on and hope that I'm not gonna like back over anything that I said before. So with that said, let me know in the comments below if you were to be a Dandadan fan. I seem to have to really just pronounce it that way, even though I'm just like whatever, whatever. Because I know if I say it slowly, or if I say it a certain like way, like I feel like I'm gonna be like, are people gonna think that I'm just speedingly saying it because I know I'm gonna mess it up? Yeah, probably. But either way, I think I'm gonna mess it up. So, anyways, I know a lot of people go on and probably click off after this, but like, I'm gonna go on and just rattle off what all happens in the episodes. There may be some little bit of things here that I can kind of lend into supernatural knowledge, but if anything, a lot of this is just going to be backing over what happened in every one of these episodes. So I get that this part of the review is not that entertaining. It's kind of like reading a book to some people. I get it. But if anything, check out the show, check out the episodes, and do whatever you like. So with that said, I'm going to go on and I'm going to pause here. I'm going to get out my character list and whatever I insist to be a thing to rattle off all these episodes and just say what happens in them, and then go on and hopefully call this an upload. So thank you for watching. I'll pause here. Oh, we got get into the dance, right? I almost forgot about it. Because it is that time again. It's spoiler time, about that time. I'm going to spoil these episodes. Let me know what it's to be a standout thing maybe for the show if you were to be a fan of it, or let me know in the comments below if you are to have realized that the Rita voice was in the show too. I don't know. Say whatever you want. Like, maybe even put down some gibberish because it just helps out the video. I guess it seems bizarrely when I'm just counting myself out, all of a sudden I'll go on and I'll see a video that just does like very well. I'm like, thank God. because like that's just something to build off of. I'm like, okay, all right, I did something good for once. Like let's try to build off of that, and hopefully this might be it. If not, then I'm like, oh well, like I'll just keep going along. I'll just keep pushing and just see where this goes. So, thank you. Let's pause here. All right, spoilers. So, or Okarun is to, of course, be the character's nickname. And I know what everybody was going on and saying. It's like, hey, that's not his name. Ken's not his name. It's the name that doesn't want to be said in the show. His name is Okarun. I get it. But if anything, I'm sure I'm probably going to be getting a lot of people that are like, his name's not Ken. Uh, I get it. But if anything, Ken for me is just easier to say than Okarun because I know I'm going to go through this whole thing and butcher that name consistently. So I thought that Ken was safer, as well as also just calling the girl Momo, because that's her name also. So it's just easy. So, and there's gonna be some characters that I'm not gonna exactly know the names of, um, because if anything, even the character list is just kind of limited. So I had to really go on and just try to make the best out of this. So, uh, we first off get Momo, who's with her soon to be ex boyfriend, as we come to find out that her boyfriend is to kind of be upset that, like, hey, I don't want to spend no money on you, and if anything, uh, like, I don't want to take you on a date anymore because you don't really put out. And so the only thing that he wants to bring this girl to is a love hotel. Like that's all he really cares about her anymore is just to just sleep with her. And I think at some point she goes on and she talks about how she's still a virgin. So we have Momo that is just getting upset because this guy is to say that she has no value. So she goes on and she takes her leg and she kicks this guy almost in the face, and he is able to block it before she does so. Eventually, we'll come to find that Momo, that is her like her bread and butter, is this massive kick. We'll go on and we'll see her use this and do this to other people, like the aliens. She'll do it to them. So Momo starts fighting this guy, and he ends up taking her down. And it's like, okay, like you're not my girlfriend. Uh, and so we all of a sudden have Momo that is insulting this guy, but she does it in like the lamest of ways. She goes on and calls him like an octopus and all these kind of weird animals. I'm like, what the are you even saying? But it's just like here's where the comedy comes in. I'm like, why is she calling them animal names? But it's just so weird and goofy. So Momo is now with her friends. And like one of the friends has some like unusual like makeup going on here. She has this like maybe she has this like skin thing where her skin is like white. Maybe that's what that is. Cuz I'm thinking I'm hoping like or maybe that's some kind of unusual makeup. I have no idea what that is. But I was just kind of like what the heck is going on there? Um but anything, we have Momo that is talking about how she just broke up with her boyfriend and kind of recreating what was going on in that scene there. And so the girls go on and they say to her, that's like, well, like, if anything, for your next boyfriend, all you're looking for is a guy that's just like Ken Takakura. And Momo, I guess, this Ken guy is to I think be some person who is in movies because she's going on and she's starting to find out when eventually she further and further starts to meet up with this other guy called Ken that he goes on and starts saying a lot of this stuff that seems very similar to the stuff that she's seen in these Ken movies. So Momo is to say that she's interested in this Ken actor character, this person that she's built up in her head, because he's this awkward guy. So Momo makes her way out of class and starts walking down the hall. And then all of a sudden, within this class, we see then Ken. Ken has this alien book out and he's reading it, paying no attention to anybody. He's having a lot of just empty desks all around him. He's sat in the back, he doesn't care, he's reading his alien book, and he's happy. He's distracted by this book. So we have these other students that are just annoyed with Ken here. So they go on and they keep just throwing papers at him. Just these papers in a ball, chucking it at him. And eventually they realize, like, well, hey, how about we go on and we ball up this paper, but put a magnet in it? That'll be heavier, that'll be harder. Yeah, I myself have gone through some school garbage like that, where I would go on to have a person behind me, like, continuously just stab me in the back with pencils while I was at school. Or I would go on at one point to have somebody continuously, just non-stoppingly, while we had a substitute teacher, continue to just kick the back of my desk and then continue to just keep kicking me. And coincidentally, I ended up getting trouble for that. Because, like, the more and more I just kept getting kicked, and the more I kept turning to this guy, and I said, hey, like, stop. Okay, it's kind of getting old. And the more and more he just kept doing it. To where it's like, obviously, like, this guy is making so much effing noise doing this. And I'm thinking, like, teacher, are you gonna handle this? Like, this freaking noise? And then I would come to find out that, like, this substitute teacher had a note from my other teacher and said I was causing trouble in the class. And so my regular teacher pointed that out to me the next day. Like, yeah, you were making a lot of noise yesterday. I'm like, no, somebody was kicking me from behind. Like, I wasn't doing anything. And so I was like, well, and so, like, the more and more I started to talk to this teacher, I'm like, I'm not lying to you. I'm telling you the truth. Like, I was getting in trouble for something I didn't even do. The school system sometimes is bullshit. Anyways, so let's keep pushing on here. Anybody who has a story like this, let me know in the comments below. I'm sure you probably do. I also was in Southern schools. I'm, of course, American. I was in Southern schools. I used to get beat up all the time, so I'm sure you probably have those stories too. I'm a tall guy who got beat up a lot. Seemed very smart, right? I'm a big, tall, scary guy that people just like to beat up because they looked at me funny. I don't know what it was. But eventually I beat the shit out of them too, because I'm just like, yeah, you don't mess with me. Sorry. Like, I'm going to defend myself. Anyways, so we cut to Momo stepping in and defending Ken here, getting these guys to stop, and then she walks away. All of a sudden, we go on to have Ken, who, the first time we see him here, he's a very nerdy looking guy. But then eventually, I think the further and further we go along into the show, the more they kind of, like, clean him up a little bit. The more I'm sure by the further and further the show goes along, he'll look like a supermodel by the end of this. He'll have, like, six-pack abs. he'll look like Superman when he's not Superman. Uh, anyways, so we have Ken that eventually goes on and is to have figured out why Momo was who wanted to talk to him, because Ken thinks that Momo noticed his alien book. And so weirdly, Ken thinks that Momo is to be some secret agent. Like she figured him out. And so Momo's like, no, I don't care about your alien books. Like, if anything, I have no real interest in alien stuff. If anything, I believe more in ghosts. Like, I believe in, like, my grandmother's a medium, and I believe in all that. And so Ken is like, well, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in all that nonsense. And so the further and further they just start knocking one another down, and they're not really going on and they're like trying to disprove anything. They're just going on and they're just like, well, yeah, well, what you believe is stupid. Well, what you believe is stupid. It's kind of just getting dumb conversation, further prolonging here. So the end goal at the end of this, as the two of them are to go on and be arguing here, is that Momo goes on and says, like, well, yeah, like, I definitely can understand why you don't have friends with the way you treat people. So does go on and she walks off and she's like, man, that was a little too harsh. So she came back and she tried to be nice to him. And so here's where they go on and they realize, like, you know what? Like, if we're just two people on two different sides of things, how about we finally go on and we can prove to one another that ghosts exist, as well as also aliens exist, as well as also Momo's friends in the background be like, oh yeah, like, she has found that other boy. Yeah, you go get it, girl. Yeah. So they make a bet between one another. They make a pact. They go on to say, hey, if I can prove that aliens exist, you're going to be my gopher. Well, hey, if I can prove that ghosts exist, then you're going to be my gopher. Come to find out, they both can go on and find out that both the situations were true, and eventually, like, the whole bet thing just kind of is a waste. But if anything, their bet has them eventually have something that changes their lives forever. So, firstly, we go off to the Nagi General Hospital. So, we come to find that both Momo and Ken had exchanged numbers, and Momo doesn't even know what Ken's actual name actually is. She ends up calling him a coon or a colt or something, and eventually, when she does finally go on and call and find out what his name actually is, it's like, oh my god, your name is Ken, exactly like that actor's name. Oh my god! So eventually, she'll freak out, and eventually she'll say to him, "It's like, well, I'm never gonna call you by Ken. Like, I'm just gonna come up with some nickname, uh, which is to be the Karoon nickname that they end kind of having him be used by." Which I'm like, Ken is a lot shorter, but whatever. Anyways, so we go on to have Ken that is calling Momo, and Momo has already made it into the abandoned hospital where Ken hasn't even gotten into the tunnel yet, because he's honestly, to be, I think, a little bit more scared than Momo is. Because Ken, he goes in the tunnel and he starts to talk really loud. And then it's the funny thing where Momo goes on and mentions, like, yeah, you're being really loud. That's stupid. Like, if anything, ghosts hate it when you're really loud. And I have proof of that. Within the movie Ghostbusters, there's at one point where Pete Bateman is going on and he's scanning around Dana Barrett's um, house with the device, and eventually he goes on and he makes his way to the piano. It goes, yeah, they hate this. Yeah, they hate it. All right, but I'm gonna keep doing it because it ticks them off. And so he goes on through the house. He finds Dick, and he finds nothing. He finds Dong, and Dana Barrett goes on and asks him, like, well, have you been using that device correctly? It's like, I think so. I don't know. And then he gets freaking pushed out as he goes on and he tries to get a date or he tries to get a kiss from her. And then she just pushes him out because, like, what a douche. Anyways, so we make our way into getting back to the story here. Momo is making her way through the abandoned hospital while talking to, of course, Ken the whole time. And so Ken goes on to tell Momo that this is a hotspot for alien abductions. And so it's interesting how, like, they keep bringing up UFOs, but also Ken has his own kind of spin on UFOs. That it's not UFOs, it's like UFAs or something like that. It's kind of goofy and weird. But anyways, so we go on to have the two characters, and uh, we would go on have uh, Ken that asks Momo if she's ever gone on to see a ghost, and she said no. But if anything, her grandmother's a medium, and her grandmother had gone on to raise her because her parents are now dead. And Ken goes on and says, like, well, I'm sorry. And she's like, come on. Like, so we come to find that Momo is to be a awkward and weird girl because she loves her grandmother. So Momo went to school one day and she had this like weird, goofy like thing that she does with her hand, going her way to school because it evidently was to be this like weird thing that her grandmother was to have her do. And all of the people at school, when they saw this girl, they were starting to make fun of her. And so eventually, like, Momo didn't care that she was getting made fun of. She just was upset that her grandmother was getting made fun of, because that's what her grandmother told her what to do. So Momo goes on and asks Ken, it's like, well, hey, why do you believe in aliens? And Ken is like, well, I don't think that really matters right now. And so it's like Momo is like, well, hey, like, don't give me that. But if anything, she just starts to like about how like this conversation just seems very like natural, and also it's just kind of like hey, let's not give any f's, and and it just seems like it's easy for them to just talk to one another. Um, so here's where things start to take a drastic change. So we of course have Ken. He's in the tunnel, and all of a sudden he's seeing these blood footprints. Further going on to get into the tunnel, to have not have heard of ooh or anything like that, and or had any suspicions that there'd be a ghost anywhere. All of a sudden, Ken with his flashlight is to pull the flashlight up after seeing the bloody footprints, and then all of a sudden sees Turbo Granny. Turbo Granny goes on and has her eyes start swirling and twisting and scaring. Of course, Ken to the point of him running the other way and running as fast as he can. The whole thing is Turbo Granny. The whole thing about her is she is to basically be this speedster. She is to be this person that can run really fast, even though she's Granny, doesn't really matter. She's really fast and she's known for that. So when Turbo Granny does go on and get her mitts on Ken, eventually she goes on to curse him, or in this terms, possess him, and goes on and takes his dong away from him, takes his peen away from him. He loses his schwantz, his down belows, his down there's. I don't know. I'm trying to avoid cussing, even though I've said a number of them already. Doesn't matter. Anyways, it's after the first minute. It's okay. So we then cut to like, okay, so when is Momo gonna get alien abducted, right? So Momo starts making her way through the hospital, and she can no longer be talking to Ken because he's no longer on the phone. She immediately thinks the worst. She's like, oh, he's definitely dead. Yeah. Him dead? Well, like, what's gonna happen here? I'm in a hospital, right? It should be the safest place in the world, right? Yeah, you would think. So Momo goes on to find these three men, but like they're men that are oddly just shaped strangely. So Momo goes on to see these three men, and she's like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna like you guys right there. I'm gonna," and so she starts booking it. Momo starts running the other way. These guys start to chase after her, kind of like the Turbo Granny all over again. We have these three men that are to be the Serpicos, these aliens into these human disguises. They go on and they grab onto Momo. They tear away at her clothing, and basically they leave Momo in her underwear and go on and strap her to this chair and bring her to their alien spacecraft, their spaceship. So we would come to find for these aliens, these from planet Serpo, that they would come to have no female gender within their alien race. So, how they would go on and need to breed is by finding female humans and needing to steal their reproductive organs. Uh, but then also to try and impregnate these women so that way they can go on and of course, and they have this very unusual, weird, goofy device that is very like robotic and just vicious looking, and I'm like, oh my god. uh when they show this thing like coming out of this guy, what it looks like out of this guy's crotch, I am just like, oh my god. Just the weirdest, goofiest bullshit. But anyways, so we go on here. And we have Momo that doesn't want to do this because she's a virgin and she's saving herself for the right guy. Good for you, Momo. So she doesn't want these aliens to take her virginity, and so like that's the whole cause of dissension here. Is yeah, this girl obviously is not willing. Good for her. Hopefully she gets those superpowers or those psychic powers pretty soon and mops the floor with these guys. So we all of a sudden come to find that the Serpos, since they're not going on and they're getting this girl to comply to what they want, they start hypnotizing her. They go on to adjust her brainwaves to be in an arousal state. Not even sure I should probably even say the A word. But anyways, so all of a sudden we start to see them being hypnotized, and we kind of see like a bunch of heads all circled around, and so very interesting kind of visual here, but also it's kind of horrific. So we come to find that Momo, of course, is a strong-willed woman that is to not to just let this happen. She's trying to, as much as possible, close her legs, and we have one of the Serpicos who's forcing her legs open, and then the device is seemingly to be just nearby a certain area of sorts. So one of the Serpicos all of a sudden ends up getting distracted by this phone that's going off. And so he's like, well, who could be this person that is distracting us at this time? And so the Serpico goes on and answers the phone, and all of a sudden, shortly thereafter, there ends up being the Turbo Granny that that rears its uh, ghostly body from phone to where they are now, and she starts to go on and starts attacking these aliens. This also, at some point, seems to me that uh, the possessed Ken character here also kind of feels like Jim Carrey the Mask. Maybe not Looney Tune-ish, but in some ways it has that kind of vibe, that kind of feel. But if anything, like the Mask had a certain kind of like skill thing about him, that it seems that he can almost kind of do anything, whereas we would go on to have these other personas that are just kind of these speed demons, these these Flash-like characters. If you guys don't know who the DC character Flash is, he runs really fast. That's really his power. Also, like, it's kind of funny that Ken, when he's not to be possessed, that he's not like pounding away on food. Like, you would think that he would be a guy that just be like, oh my god, I have to non-stoppingly eat. Because for a speedster, like, you would think that you would have to just chow down on food, because I know the Flash would go on and do the same. They would have to figure out a way to just kind of make it look like he's just pounding down food all the time on the show. But anyways, so Turbo Granny possessed in Ken, so I'll say Turbo Granny here instead of Ken. Turbo Granny comes in and is to immediately rip out one of the dongs of one of the Serpos, and one of the Serpos goes flying into this wall. We have at one point where Turbo Granny and Ken are kind of sharing half of a face at one time here, and so Ken is briefly explaining to Momo what happened to him and how he's cursed now, and how Turbo Granny is wanting to take control. So Momo is hoping that Ken is going to help her here, and he will, because eventually Ken will go on to say, it's like, well, yeah, I'm willing to become a monster for Momo. I'm willing to help her if this monster thing can do that. So and so we have Turbo Granny that takes control. Like, I'm gonna gobble up all your dogs. And like, so uh, here's where we go on and we have the aliens in these costumes. They finally rip away from it and they actually show their goofy, weird alien cells. And we come to find that they have their own like weird like psychic powers, and one of them is to use their sixth sense and one of them is to use their weird other goofy attacks, their serpogrametry, whatever that means, because eventually when Turbo Granny goes on and starts attacking these aliens, she wipes them out, and then rips off their down belows, and then they have this, uh, you know what I mean. I don't have to go into detail, nitty gritty detail. Anyways, so when Ken goes on and he gets overpowered by one of the aliens, and he's smashed into this wall, he probably thinks that now this is probably going to be a time that he's probably going to fail at trying to help out Momo. And he is to mention that all he's ever wanted is to just have a friend. And the only one that had ever paid attention to him was Momo. This is the only human being in the world, is to ever be Momo, that has ever paid attention to this guy. And for Ken to have finally seen someone to have done that for him, he's willing to do anything in the world for this girl because he was paid attention to for once in his life. So Ken fully immerses himself back into Turbo Granny, and just cannot think that he can go on and uh save Momo at this point, because he just doesn't have the power to, because again, these aliens are to have these psychic powers and he just is stymied by them. So Momo, in realizing she's in jeopardy here, that soon she will go on and she will be subdued by these aliens, we then go on to have Momo be thinking of her grandmother and how her grandmother had told her about this muscle in her tummy, and how all these people were making fun of her because she was going on and doing the weird goofy thing with her hands, um, on her way to school. So and Momo, because she didn't want to go on and have people make fun of her anymore, she was upset with her grandmother and just called her a fake, and said that she hated her, and she walked off. And eventually, the grandmother will go on and throw that back into Momo's face of like, well, yeah, I guess I am a fake. I guess I am a not good a medium. But so here's where Momo goes on and saves herself. She finds her psychic powers and she goes on to use it and free herself, and then kick the Serpco in the face. Uh, so shortly thereafter that, we then come to find that the moon is to be all this facade. The moon is to actually be this alien spaceship that is starting to crash land onto Earth, and all of a sudden, Momo is now with Ken as they're on the ship, and Ken has now been back to be possessed by uh, Turbo Granny, and she's biting Momo on the arm. It's like, oh my god, why are you biting me? Because Momo is now going to figure out how to use her psychic abilities to stop having Ken being Turbo Granny and to figure out how to just keep uh, control of him so he won't be possessed by this woman because she has these psychic abilities to separate them. So separate them meaning like having like Turbo Granny kind of just somewhere dormant in him, but have kind of Ken being able to kind of take the reins. But any time that the two of them are not together or in like eyeball of one another, and eventually that kind of lends into some comedy within the show because they have to be an eyeball of one another, or otherwise Ken is to be cursed. Oh, the curse! It's riding me. Ah, oh, the curse. Anyways, so and it kind of gets really funny every time he like busts into somewhere. He's like, the curse, ah! And Momo's like, I'm getting dressed, or I'm doing this, or Ken is like, I have to go to the bathroom, and you have to watch me. You have to watch me go, or otherwise the curse, and I won't be able to pee. Anyways, so or well, he can't pee anyways. He'd have to take a dump. He'd take a good old number two. So we have the alien spacecraft, and it crashes, and so a door is busted open, and the two of them get out of the spacecraft, and now they're just walking home at this point. So now we have the scoreboard going on here, or kind of like the recapping. So Momo's like, "Well, hey, I was snatched by aliens," and Ken was like, "Well, uh, I was cursed by a ghost," and so both of them say, "And now I believe in them now." So Momo is to go on and mention how she had lost everything. She had lost her phone, she had lost her clothes, wallet, and everything. So now the next thing to focus on is like, okay, how are we going to get rid of this curse? Because if anything, I'm sure Momo is kind of just getting really annoyed how she has to really go on and really be on the ball with this whole keeping this curse uh, to not kind of ripen back to the surface. So Momo comes up with this idea. It's like, well, hey, well, maybe we just need to go back to the tunnel, the source of the whole um, possession thing. Because yeah, like we come to find out that ghosts, like the whole key is where it was all started. Uh, Ghosts, it seems, really do have this kind of whole like perimeter thing where they can't leave past a certain area. Um, because of how like much connection they had with it. That's why they like to haunt in certain areas. Um, there's sometimes where like there's ghosts that just kind of follow people around because they're relatives or it's within the family or whatever. Um, or also it's just kind of random things like these public areas that eventually will have ghosts in them because of course they will. So we have Ken that goes on and basically gives away all of his clothes almost, except for maybe his boxers, to Momo. And Ken kind of blames himself for what all had happened tonight. And so Ken goes on and just tells Momo, "Hey, I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna force myself to go into the tunnel. I'm gonna figure out how to reverse this whole curse thing, and so Momo's like, well, hey, you don't really have to do that. Plus, like, they can't really not be not together. Like, they're kind of attached to the hip right now. Because Momo has to just keep control of Ken. They can't separate whatsoever. So Momo gives Ken some of his clothes back. So we have at one point where Ken just kind of stops and he apologizes and he's like, well, you know what? I'm a really awkward guy. And Momo's like, okay, why did you say? So, and Ken is going on and telling Momo that she needs to kind of put some clothes on, because he's like continuously kind of like peeking at her. He's kind of staring at her. And he's kind of like he's getting a look, and it's kind of getting difficult to just kind of not be looking at this girl and just eyeballing her. So the more and more that this guy starts to talk, Momo starts to realize that, like, well, hey, Ken is starting, or Ken is sounding more like the Ken actor that I know. So we finally go on to have Momo that asks Ken, it's like, well, hey, you know what? I never really knew what your name was. Can you tell me what your name is? And he says, oh, it's Ken. It's Ken Takakura. And she's like, what? And then all of a sudden, this big, huge alien spaceship explodes in the back of them. And then we cut to the end of this episode. So, episode 2. Momo is talking to Ken. It's like, wait a minute. Your name is what? And so he goes on and repeats it. It's like, yeah, my name is Ken Takakura. And and so Momo goes on and is to kind of lose her right now, to where she doesn't focus on Ken that much, and then he starts to become cursed and starts to become possessed. Oh, I had gone out to watch this movie called My Demon Lover, very similar to this to this show. I completely spaced out about it, but yeah, it's very similar to that. I probably should have mentioned that somewhere earlier in this review, but I didn't think about that until now. Well, nobody's probably going to tune in for an hour to find this bit of information out. If you did, I appreciate it, but I'm sure a lot of people probably might have just clicked off after the first 20 seconds, and that's completely fine. So, but if anything, missing a little bit of knowledge, but regardless, it doesn't matter. Uh, so the curse is what Ken shouts. So as the curse starts to take over, we're like, yeah, I'll gobble your tongue. Anyways, so Momo is to use her powers and to chuck Ken across this wall, and so Momo starts making rules. And so the first one is to be like, yeah, you're never going on and you're never going by your actual name. I'm going to call you some other nickname. I'm going to call you Akaroon or Okaroon. So the two of them, they start to make their way to the tunnel. And the further and further they start to get there, and one of them farts, uh, eventually they decide on not going to the tunnel because they realize, well, if anything, we probably should not go to the tunnel during the day because I'm sure Turbo Granny will not go on and won't be there. Because I guess they assume that ghosts will only come at night. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, but also, uh, Turbo Granny is kind of possessed within uh Ken, so I'm just kind of confused of why they're saying that like ghosts don't come out, like it's within him. Just exorcise him. Uh get that evil out of him. Get that evil without inside of him. Come on, rip it out. Come on, just rip that ripcord out. Anyways, so here's my question within this whole thing: does Ken have parents? Because if anything, Ken just starts going on and just starts living with these people and just has a meal with these people and everything. And like, there's never a question of whether this guy has family or anything or not. None of that ever comes up in these episodes. I've watched 4 episodes and there's not one thing where Ken goes on and starts talking about his family. Like, is Ken an orphan? Like, how does that work? Like, why is it that nobody's really like concerned about where Ken is? Because this guy is gone for like a number of days and nobody's none the wiser. It's strange. So Ken and Momo uh, make their way to Momo's house. And what ends up happening here is as soon as Ken makes his way past the fence opening of Momo's place, all of a sudden he starts bursting into flame, or what looks like supernatural flame, because this does not look like normal flames going on here. So Momo goes on and uses her psychic power to thrust Ken into this bit of water gap, and Ken seems to now be fine. But then Momo is to go on and realize the reason that Ken had just bursted into flame is because they have this barrier spell right by this fence opening. And this whole barrier spell basically means like it's the whole vampires, like you have to be invited to come in kind of thing. And if you're an evil spirit, you can't come in here because, yeah, we have this barrier spell that's going to block you from coming in. So yeah, I guess for this girl who's to be this medium and this supernatural expert that at some point will go on and just be worried about all these things, yeah, all the more reason for her to go on and not to have any ghosts or willy-nilly spirits be coming her way to her home. Anyways, so uh, I apologize. I'm still kind of dealing with pneumonia, so I have a little bit of a stuffy nose, and also I am to still at some points be coughing. Um, so my apologies if I'm just kind of still dealing with kind of the issues of that. But anyways, let's go back to this. So we have Momo that removes the barrier, and so Ken is like poking his hand out to hope that he's not going to burst into flame, and then everything's okay. So the two of them make their way into the house, and Momo starts calling out for her grandmother and realizes, like, oh, I guess she's not there. So the two of them go into Momo's room, and Momo wants to change. But the whole thing is, like, Momo is to try to close her door, and all of a sudden, the curse! And then Momo's like, well, I'm trying to change. And so they have to figure out that, like, Ken is going to have to be, like, outside the hallway while Momo is changing. And Momo is to go on and talk about how every time he changes, like, that there's pain there and it feels so bad. So Momo goes on and throws Ken this hoodie for him to wear. It's like, well, hey, yeah, it's kind of baggy, and like, who cares? Like, you'll just have this bit of clothing, and at least it's something other than what you've been wearing. So we even at one point where Ken starts talking to Momo. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see anything. He's like, I already have clothes on. And he's like, oh, so So we cut to uh, um, we cut to the two of them talking here, and we cut to Ken, and he's talking about how he doesn't really have friends, and how he just likes weird paranormal things, and the more that both of them start to talk, they start talking about how gauche one another is, and it's kind of funny because Momo's like, I don't even know what gauche means. So all of a sudden, there's this doorbell that goes off, and Momo is kind of concerned about this doorbell, and Ken is like, well, why should we be concerned about this doorbell? So Momo's like, well, there is like the normal doorbell that everyone uses, and then there's also the supernatural doorbell uh, that only few people hear and few people know exists. And the supernatural doorbell went off. So we come to find that there is this big, huge, massive thing waiting at the doorway of this house. And so Momo's like, oh, I completely forgot to put that barrier spell back up. And Ken is like, well, hey, yeah, it's good that you didn't because otherwise I'd be roasting right now. So, but if anything, that is to welcome in a big, huge, massive alien. That is to be called I think it's to be called the Flatwood monster. Uh, yeah, the Flatwoods monster. Uh, but they say he's an alien. So monster, alien. I'm gonna go with alien. Um, but even though they say he's a monster, or I'll just call him Flatwoods. That'll probably be easier to just say who this character is then. So eventually, instead of going through the front door, they make their way out the back, and they all of a sudden start to see this black fog that appears, and then all of a sudden there is to be these walls that appear all around uh, this fenced area as a barrier for them to not be able to go anywhere. So Ken was trying to go on and trying to leave the fenced in area so that way Momo could put the barrier back, but it's too late now. The wall has appeared, and now Ken can't escape. So they all of a sudden look at the barrier thing, and there's blood on it, and then all of a sudden they notice that their noses have blood on it, and maybe that's because the air is getting thin. I don't know what that is. I don't know why their noses were bleeding. But so we have the Flatwoods gigantic alien that comes appearing here and is to be fisting. I could have just said punching. Is to kind of punch his way and hit this barrier wall or this huge, massive concrete wall that's put around this fenced area. He punches it, and so we now have Ken, and we now have Momo, whose only plan is to just run here, run away from this thing. So, if anything, we'd come to find that this Flatwoods monster is to be wanting their bananas. And so Momo ends up asking Ken, it's like, well, hey, like, does he want your banana? Like, do you have another banana down there? Because if anything, like, your banana is supposedly gone. Like, you have no dick. So, anyways, Ken is like, no, I don't have another banana. I don't know why they're asking me about this, and I don't know why we even have to keep mentioning bananas. This is stupid. So we have Momo that doesn't quite understand why it is that that Flatwoods monster was to have gone on and had the doorbell go off. And Ken says it like, well, technically he's, regardless of him being an alien or a monster or a whatever, like he's still an evil spirit, so that's kind of a gray area of like, well, hey, he's kind of evil in a way, so if anything, that doorbell is just gonna go off. So we have the Flatwoods that goes on and starts opening its mouth, the monster, and starts spraying more black fog. The more and more black fog starts to come in, Momo's realizing that they're going to become more and more in jeopardy. So we would go on to just have where Ken comes up with the plan of like, well, hey, how about you just let my curse a lot more free? Because what else can we do? Uh, Plus, maybe he can go on and have this curse to be used to some kind of benefit. So we do go on and we have Ken that switches into Turbo Granny. And it's kind of in and out. And eventually, when they finally decide to do the whole shift, so Momo gives in to Ken, and so he transforms. But this time around, Ken is to turn into his bummer persona, and somehow we would go on to, of course, have Momo that is to see the aura of Ken and twist it in a way that it turns into this bummer persona instead of Turbo Granny or something else. So it's kind of something where Ken has more control, but also he's being this other identity, this other persona. So Persona 5. Anyways, so now we have the bummer character coming in, the bummer persona. I'm just gonna call him Bummer. And he's like, yeah, like uh yeah, I'm surging with powers now. Feeling pretty gloomy though. Anyways, so he's like, yeah, I'm bum AF. So he's like, yeah, man, I'm an awkward guy, yo. This is basically Jesse Pinkman from the Breaking Bad, but as this guy. He's whoever this guy is. It's like he's basically Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad. Straight up, he's this guy. It's weird. If they would have gone on and they would have casted that guy, it would have been like, oh yeah, like obviously. So at this point, it's like, hey, go on and attack this thing. Try to figure out how to beat it. So Bummer is like, well, yeah, like I guess I should do this, and I'm probably gonna die, yo. But so all of a sudden, while Bummer is kind of not paying attention to this monster that he's standing right in front of, Momo is telling Bummer that he's going to get like clapped here. Like the guy is going on and winging up his hands to do like this smashing attack. So when he goes on and he puts up his hands, Bummer mentions how he's like, man, I dodged that without even thinking. Like, man, these powers are really bomber, yo, or whatever. What the is that guy saying? So all of a sudden, we come to find that Bummer is to have these fingers, and they're all just on the ground somewhere. And then Bummer is to kind of chuck one of these fingers off to the side. He's like, oh, well, like, so. So they're trying to figure out what the heck Bummer's going to do next. And so we also have Momo that is to try to figure out the strategy of this monster also. And at one point, Bummer does turn back into Ken. And so here's where they go on and they start figuring out the strategy of this monster. They come to find out that the positioning that he keeps going in is the exact same uh, positioning of a sumo wrestler, that he's doing these sumo poses. So Momo realizes that if this monster goes on and sinks his hand into the ground, that will destroy it. And so that's all they need to do is figure out a way for this monster to put its hand onto the ground to defeat it in that manner. So Momo is thinking that that is the strategy, but then eventually, when the monster does put its hand on the ground, it doesn't completely defeat it. It is to just go on and eventually just keep on going. And then Momo ends up getting ticked off. Because eventually she's like, well, hey, you cheated. Like, I was going to beat you that way, but it wasn't working out. So, and eventually here's where things shift. Because Ken turns back into Bummer, and Bummer does go on and destroy one of the monster's kneecaps. And here's one strategy that I found out while watching Nerd Science is like the human body has weaknesses. Like, go on and take a monster out by the knees and he can no longer walk. Take the elbows and every joint, and yeah, it really weakens a being that has those body parts. So yeah, that is actually a pretty sound advice. That is a sound idea to try to hobble monsters so they can't really move that well. Yeah, like when you think about it, like breaking bones is really hard, but like if anything, yeah, like the best strategy is to just like make uh whoever you're fighting against just not worth it for them to just keep coming at you, or making it slower for them to keep coming at you. So that's the best strategy. If you can't figure out how to defeat them, figure out a way to slow them down until you can figure out what is the best strategy. That's brilliant in my mind. Uh, so we have at one point where Flatwoods is going on and uh attacking Momo. He goes on and he thrusts her into the barrier concrete wall. And now we have to a point where Turbo Granny is kind of taking hold of Ken, but it's kind of in and out. And Momo is keeping control of Ken, and Ken is like, no, just make me just fully possessed. Because if anything, I can do something and try to defeat this monster. And Momo's like, no, it's my time now. I'm gonna go on, and I'm kind of ticked off that this monster cheated. So if anything, I'm gonna take over and I'm gonna fight him. Which I'm like, dang girl, like man, you got some freaking confidence. So now we have Momo that is just basically telling this monster, continue to hit me, because it seems that Momo brilliantly has a plan in mind. So this monster is just wailing away at her, creating a bigger and bigger hole that Momo is just kind of laying in. And then all of a sudden, we come to find out what eventually Momo's strategy is. So Momo has created a good enough hole that she is to use her psychic powers to have Ken, like, uh psychically next to her, and then she goes on and slaps the barrier back onto the fenced area, which then completely is to turn the flatwood monster into flames. I'm like, oh my god, this is brilliant. Brilliant strategy. This neutralizes the threat. Oh my god, this is awesome. So, all of a sudden, we're now back with Momo and Ken back at her home, and nothing is to go on and be a lick of damage. Everything is to be back the way it was. And we're like, what the heck? Like, that made no sense. It's kind of like Gantz in a way, if you guys had ever heard of that anime. At one point, there are people that are dead but also alive in a weird, strange way. And they go on and they meet at night to become these, like, alien hunters. And they're fighting against this alien threat that can't be seen by the public, as well as also they can't be actually seen by the public. But they're going on and they're facing off against these aliens, and it's very weird and very bizarre. And the way it all plays out in every episode is just kind of, it just gets really more and more interesting. I was to go on to I think I at least saw the first 2 seasons of it. But I think I only have on here the review of the second season. I should probably review the first season at some point, just re-review that. But there's a lot of XES or SEX in there. Or there's a lot of new NUDEs, nudity. I didn't say anything. There's a lot of that in that show. Anyways, but yeah, so let's cut back to the show. So Ken and Momo are back, and Momo is to finally just take a quick break, and then Ken turns into the curse. And then Ken is like, just give me a freaking breather. God dang it. Just give me a freaking breath. You would think that since this girl knows everything about supernatural stuff, she would know as much stuff as her grandmother is to know, because at any moment her grandmother could be dead. And then, like, she had never gone on to share any of this knowledge about any of this supernatural stuff. And that could go on and greatly protect her granddaughter, but I guess she could not be bothered, right? Anyways, so here's where we see where Ken's hair is different, because when he was on fire, all of a sudden his hair turned into a perm. Now it seems to have his hair look a little bit more better, and it actually again is where he looked very dorky in the beginning of this. It seems like he's starting to look more interesting now. And again, by the further and further that I feel that we're going to get into the show, like, this character is probably going to look a little bit more attractive, I'm assuming, right? Probably. Anyways, so all of a sudden we have Momo that is to start to feel a little bit dizzy, and she passes out. And then we would have Turbo Granny that takes over Ken. Then cut to the end of the episode. We get to the third episode here, and in the beginning of it, we have Siko, the grandmother. She's going on, and she has this local TV channel, and she is to be interviewing or doing a reading to this celebrity boy. And it's funny because the reader, she goes on and she says, "Oh yeah, you're 27," and he's like, "No, I'm 20." And she says, "Oh, okay, you have a wife and a kid." He's like, "No, I'm single." And then she's like, "Okay, well, you like curry?" And he's like, "No, I like ramen." And so supposedly everyone is to go on and believe this celebrity over this reader. And so there's be some executives, the guys behind the scenes, that are just like, okay, like, yeah, this psychic reader girl, she sucks. So obviously, uh, she couldn't get a single thing right about this guy. So what are we gonna do? Like, we don't want to just huck this footage. So should we just put it out there anyways? Like, yeah, we'll just put it out there anyways because nobody really watches local TV. So who cares? So we then cut to Siko, and she's walking off. She gets into this car, and it seems that there's to be this taxi driver that is driving the grandmother home that notices her and notice her from TV. And so it's funny, like, this person goes on and notices her from TV, and she's like, well, hey, I'm not going to go on and I'm not going to be in this car anymore. I'm just going to walk from my location. I don't want to talk to anymore. So the grandmother goes on and finds Turbo Granny, and immediately she throws this brick that has this nail in it, and then the brick breaks. So all of a sudden, uh, the grandmother, she has this silver bat on her. And I'm curious if this silver bat is because, like, silver is the weakness for most supernatural beings, even though in this case this is a ghost. I think weirdly silver, I guess, has to be the go-to weakness because I guess for werewolves, like, the silver bullet, so all of a sudden everything has to be silver now, and that made no effing sense to me. Like, I'm sorry, if you're gonna go on, you're gonna take down vampires, wooden stake. If you're gonna, well, any stake whatsoever, any, like, just take a sword and chop off their head. Uh, I just don't understand why it has to exactly be a wooden stake. It doesn't make sense to me. But also, like, a silver bullet to the chest, I'm like, okay, why does it have to be silver bullet? But also, like, I don't know why it has to be such specifics about how to take a monster down. And then sometimes there's some zombie things where it's like, if you were to shoot it in the head, even that, it doesn't work. So you really have to go on and figure out a very specific, tailored way to take the zombie down because a bullet to the head won't do. So you have to go on and take like a lawnmower to it, or kind of like in the Brain Dead movie, where yeah, you have to take a lawnmower to the zombies to figure out a way to take it out, or otherwise the organs or whatever is left of the body is coming after you. And that movie is just kind of sick and kind of crazy in a cool way. But there's also some moments where it's just like, ugh. So the grandmother goes on and starts just wailing on Turbo Granny here. And then she places her in uh this circle and then tells her, hey, yeah, I'm going to put this nail down and you're going to be caught here. And so it's really interesting how further this grandmother, she keeps going on making all these circles and putting these nails down. And we have Turbo Granny that's like, well, hey, you're not going to go on and you're not going to keep me in the circle forever. And the grandmother's like, no, I'm not going to keep you in the circle. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to get rid of you. And Turbo Granny's like, well, hey, if you go on and if you kill me, you're killing the person that I'm possessing. And the grandmother is like, dude, I don't care. Like, if anything, like, I don't know who this guy is that's possessing, being possessed by you right now, and, or being a host of you right now that you've possessed. And, like, if anything, I'm sure whoever this guy is wasn't good enough for my daughter anyways, so, or my grandchild anyways, so I don't care. So the grandmother just starts wailing on this ghost, having us assume that this ghost is going to be killed by this grandmother. And then we just cut to Momo waking up. And Momo wakes up in her bed and finds her grandmother downstairs watching her stories or watching her telly, her TV. And so Momo goes on and asks her grandmother, like, well, hey, did you see that guy that was with me? Like, so eventually the grandmother is like, oh, yeah, you mean the evil spirit that I killed? And then Momo's like, what? So Momo starts running out there to see what the heck had happened after she goes on and she apologizes and she uh, said that she was wrong to her grandmother and she believes uh, that everything is real and that she's not a fake medium and so on and so forth. So Momo goes outside and the grandmother reveals that Ken is still alive. That if anything, she kept him in this one little kind of uh, spare house where eventually the spirit would be neutralized, so that way he can sleep there and not become the spirit. So, or become Turbo Granny. And Momo opens the door and sees uh, that Ken is eating some rice meal. So it's kind of funny because while Momo and the grandmother are talking, at one point, Momo mentions how this boy's name is Ken. And so the grandmother's like, hey, isn't that like your favorite actor guy that you like? And it's like, oh, that's why you got that boy. And then so the grandmother goes on and is telling this Ken guy through this wall. It's like, hey, this girl really likes you. So it's pretty funny. So the more and more that Momo and grandmother are talking and Ken's not in their conversation, eventually he opens the door and he's like, well, hey, can I be in this conversation now because you guys are talking about me? So the grandmother goes on and mentions the story about Turbo Granny and mentions why she had gone on to be in that tunnel. Supposedly, there's stories about women getting dumped on those tunnels, and eventually we'll come to find when Turbo Granny ends up getting kind of freed by the end of this. Spoilers for the for what happens by the end here. So yeah, we find out that there is a bunch of women that all get dumped into this tunnel, and then when Turbo Granny ends up getting freed, it seems that all these women start to have their spirits get freed also. So the grandmother is to talk about how within the tunnel there's to be a number of bound spirits. There's also going to soon be this huge crab monster that ends up attacking Momo and Ken at one point. So they eventually come to figure out between both Momo and the grandmother how to strategically beat Turbo Granny. And the grandmother comes up with the idea that Turbo Granny needs to be challenged. That eventually they need to race Turbo Granny. And Momo's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to beat Turbo Granny. Think about it. Like, she's a speed demon. And so Momo's like, yeah, like, even when I was in track, like, yeah, like, I don't think I can go on and beat this girl. And so the grandmother is telling Momo, it's like, no, you're not going to beat Turbo Granny. If anything, Ken is. Because Ken is going to go on and become this bummer persona and then be able to beat Turbo Granny because he'll be a speedster also. So, but if anything, the grandmother is to say, it's like, well, yeah, but you guys are going to definitely need some more training. You guys are going to definitely have to learn how to use your powers better because the girl is kind of like her psychic power needs some kind of tweaking, as well as also they really need to get their reps in because Ken is going to figure out how heavy Momo is, and Ken is like, dude, there's gonna be no way I'm gonna be able to do what you guys need me to do, because both Momo and Ken need to be attached at the hip. So they figure out that this girl needs to be piggybacked off of Ken, and Ken is like, yeah, there's no way. And so the grandmother tells Ken, it's like, well, hey, you got to go on, you got to do all these squats, you got to do all these, you got to do these exercises, and eventually you need to build up your strength because, yeah, you guys are gonna have a very limited window of time to go on and be able to challenge this woman, because, or otherwise, this guy's gonna just continue to be cursed. So, here is also what the grandmother mentions about that they have a territory. That Momo, with her psychic powers, she has a certain territory to use their powers in. Uh, so not only does a psychic thing have like a kind of a barrier of being able to use their powers, but also so does anything else. So their plan is to eventually get Turbo Granny out of a certain territory of place, so that way it'll go on and destroy her that way, uh, to eventually lift the curse from off of Ken. So, and that's what they're going to try to do within this running challenge, is to eventually get to the barrier place, to have this be a kind of a chasing thing instead of a race. It's more of like a chase, or like Momo mentions that it's kind of like tag, how how Turbo Granny is kind of it, and she needs to like tag these people. So I think I've gotten most of my bases covered during this whole scene. Let's just kind of cut away here. So we have the grandmother, she's going on, she's watching telly, and she comes to find out that there's this whole big thing revealed that this celebrity did have a wife and child, and he was actually 27 instead of 20. And then of course the grandmother is like, well, yeah, he likes Kurt and he doesn't like Robin. Like, he lied about everything. So we now come to find that Ken desperately needs to take a dump. He needs to take a good old number two. He needs to go into the crapper. So Ken is going on and basically doing the pee pee dance without a pee pee, and he needs to go take the Browns to the Super Bowl. So we, of course, have Momo that does not want Ken to go to the bathroom because she knows she has to be there to watch him take a dump. So, but he doesn't have a pee pee, so it's fine anyways. So, like, it doesn't matter. So you see him take a shit, whatever, who cares? I'm cursing way too much of this review, I realize. So here is where the grandmother goes on and is to figure out how Momo needs to control Ken, but not by looking at him, but by using her other senses. So the grandmother goes on and tells Momo, and like the whole time the grandmother is talking, she has these like eye blinders on, which I'm like, okay, how is it? Like, what is she doing? So, because if anything, Momo is to have the ability to be able to take things and be able to control them, uh, meaning having them like float in front of her. Uh, but if anything, after that first time that she was to use her powers, her powers have kind of weakened. So, anyways, Momo is to go on and close her eyes and use her sense of touch and adjust adjust Ken's aura. So Ken runs to the bathroom and Momo is trying to use her psychic ability to stop him from doing so. But he does get to the bathroom and Momo is like hopping on his back. So he gets to the bathroom and Momo has to watch him basically take a dump. So we would go on to have, of course, Ken, who's very upset at this point. He's like, man, I just want this curse to end. This sucks. And so we all of a sudden have Momo that kind of is to be a little bit distracted. And then all of a sudden opens the door and notices that Turbo Granny has kind of taken hold of Ken. And Turbo Granny goes on and tells Momo that it's like, hey, you're gonna go on, and you're gonna have a showdown between you and me uh, tonight, or I'm gonna go on, and I'm gonna hurt the people you love, I'm gonna give them a heart attack, or I'm gonna kill them. So, because Turbo Granny is not playing around, she's not playing around, everybody. So, the next thing we see is that the grandmother is bleeding from her nose, and Momo is kind of concerned. So, the grandmother is trying to protect both Momo and Ken by putting them in clothes that'll protect them from evil spirits. And the grandmother is also having her own bit of clothing on. So the grandmother goes on and hugs Momo before she leaves and tells her to don't die on her. So they go on and they make their way to this subway. And they don't know if they can really pull this off. If anything, they're just kind of questioning everything. So I think this is right as where we also go on and we cut to the next episode. So the next episode, the two of them are making their way to the tunnel. And they're back and forthing of who should go in there first. But they're like, no, we should go in at the same time. We're going in at the same time. So, but it's kind of funny. The further and further they go into the tunnel, it's like, hey, like I'm ahead of you. No, you're ahead of me. Blah, blah. So, like, they're obviously both scared here. They don't know what to expect. And then eventually the flashlights are having them seeing a number of things here: bloody footprints, holes in the walls, all kinds of things. So, the further and further they go into the tunnel, they find out that eventually Turbo Granny is to have this huge, massive head that is poking its way out of this tunnel. Like, oh my god, she's huge! She's a huge bit. She's a huge ghost. So Ken and both Momo are freaking out, and they're kind of tempted to run away, but eventually, any exit they try to go through, they realize that Granny's face is right in front of them. There's nowhere to go. So we would go on to have Ken that turns into the bummer and is like, okay, maybe I should go on and maybe I should start attacking this girl. All right. So he goes on and he starts to make his way to Granny, but then all of a sudden, the bummer is to be stripped away from Ken, and now Ken is back to be Ken. And Momo's like, hey, what the heck happened? Granny goes on to explain that she had stripped away the bummer persona to not be able to use right now and gave Ken back his schwants, his down belows, his nethers, his tiny. Anyways, so because also, uh, Momo is to have closed her eyes and not seen the ghostly persona on Ken anymore, so she can know that it's true. So plus Granny's like, well, hey, you're not going to use your power, my power against me. No, you're not. You're not going to be able to. You're not going to have that advantage. So here's where Granny is almost so close to gobbling up the two of them, and then here's where Momo goes on and says, like, well, no, like I'm going to give you this challenge, and because the grandmother goes on and tells Momo to like, hey, taunt her, give her crap, tell her you're going to be better than her, and challenge her, and then so she'll take you up on that challenge. So they come up with this game of tag. Momo goes on to tell Granny here that, hey, give both Momo and Ken a 10-minute head start and count to 10 minutes and then come after them. So what goes on and what happens here is that Turbo Granny goes on and she starts cheating. Because Turbo Granny goes on and she counts, but she counts very quickly. She doesn't do the 1, 2, 3. No. She goes on like, okay, 1, 4, 18, 1 minute, 3 minutes. So she's going on and she just counting away, and she gets so quickly to those 10 minutes, and then she starts thrusting her away all these huge, massive fingers to go on and grab onto Momo and grabs her. It's like, okay, well, I won. And so now Momo is captured, and now Ken is to go on, and he is to be by himself as himself. So Ken goes on to need to figure out what he's going to do here. And Turbo Granny's like, well, hey, am I going to have to tag for you too? Like, how many minutes do you want? Do you want 4? Do you want 10? What is it going to matter? Because I'm going to cheat anyways. So when Ken met up with Turbo Granny, the first thing that she said was, hey, I'll go on and I'll let you suckle of my my teat if I go on and I can take some of your dong. And I'm trying to figure out the clever way to kind of get around all this, because I've already cussed enough on this thing. So eventually what happens is Ken remembers that. So Ken goes on and he thrusts his way into Granny's teat, her chest, and he will not let go of it. And so Granny's like flinging him around, trying to get rid of him. And so she's like, well, you really will not let go. So if anything, the only way I can go on and stop you from latching onto me like this is if I possess you. And that's exactly what Ken wanted, because he is unpossessed, now he's possessed again. So we now have Ken possessed, and Ken is saying, it's like, oh, okay, good, I'll go on and I'll just eat this girl now, because I've kind of won, right? So all of a sudden, as Turbo Granny starts to walk, she's all of a sudden starting to feel weird. She's starting to feel weak. She's starting to like, what's going on? So Momo goes on to use her twisting power of touch and turns Turbo Granny into a spirit that is kind of latched on to uh to Ken, and it's to have its kind of own weird kind of like snake persona that is latched on to Ken here. So since Turbo Granny can't now go on and attack these two, she has an ace up her sleeve. She has this mount spirit, this huge crab that comes in. So this crab is now coming in, and Turbo Granny explains this mounted spirit. So now Momo and now Ken are running from this crab, and it's kind of funny eventually how Momo afterwards is like, man, I really want some crab right now. And Ken is like, really? Like, so Ken has now turned into the bummer persona, and Momo is now riding him, and Momo is now having control. She's hanging on to Turbo Granny that is latched onto Ken. So Ken is to mention how we can't make this curve, and eventually he smashes through this thing. And Momo goes on to eventually use her psychic abilities to be able to help Ken kind of curve through uh, and bank all these corners, because eventually she has her huge, massive hands of psychic powers that are to kind of control better where they're going. So all of a sudden they're flying into the air, and Bummer is to use his legs as almost like a helicopter, but he can only use it for a very brief time. So at some point, Bummer uses his body as a shield to fall on Momo as they kind of fall uh, onto this building and then onto the ground. So we now cut to Ken and Momo, and they're continuing to run throughout the town, being chased by this crab. So the master plan is that Momo is to make her way with Ken to this sauna or hot springs. Man, like I just got to watch Zom 100 and they did a whole episode about hot springs. Man, what is up with this hot springs thing? I think it's weird how I always go on and I watch stuff and there's some weird kind of connection with all these things. Maybe it's just a weird coincidence. Uh, but it's a strange coincidence. I don't know. I don't plan this stuff. I really don't. I wish I did. Um, because man, I'd be like, I am just somehow just weirdly like having these vibes of just like, oh, I'm just gonna watch this and I just check, and all of a sudden weird connections going on. Anyways, so uh, maybe I'm a medium. I doubt it because I suck at telling the future. Uh, anyways, so they go into this hot springs, and so the crab ends up falling into this hot water. And then all of a sudden, the crab, it seems, is hard to be able to move. And so they figure out how to separate themselves from the crab. So Ken and Momo think they have a good advantage here, that they're still making their way to the barrier of the city to try to get rid of Turbo Granny. But then all of a sudden, we come to find that there is a bunch of either zombies or spirits that are chasing after uh, both Ken and Momo here. So, Turbo Granny is to mention how there is a graveyard nearby, and so she decided to call upon all of these spirits to chase after them. So that's why they're all here. And so we see the mounted spirit, the big huge crab, and then all the zombies are chasing after them. So we have Ken, he's back to his normal self. And Momo is telling Ken that he needs to turn into the Bummer character one more time. And Ken is telling Momo, it's like, well, hey, when I turn to this persona, I can only do it for such a certain amount of time, and I can only do it only twice. So Momo's like, do it now. So they turn in the Bummer character. Momo's using her psychic powers to kind of create shortcuts. And eventually we get to a point here where they are flying in the air. And Momo is telling Ken to not let go of her, because she's going to use her psychic powers to kind of just stop and kind of save them from dying, um, or kind of make the impact not as big, and for then Ken to briefly be Bummer so they can kind of brace and not have so much impact so they won't get killed. But then Ken turns back into his normal self. It's like, hey, I can't turn into to that guy anymore. Like it's tearing me apart. So, well, yeah, because they've only been doing this for so briefly now, and so yeah, they're gonna go on and not be as strong. So all the zombies and all the crabs are making their way closer and closer to Ken and Momo, and so now we have Turbo Granny that is going on, and she's in the lineup of people also. And she ends up fusing with her mounted spirit, her crab, and we now go on to have Turbo Granny, who's assuming that she's winning at this point, that she's going to kill them. So she's like, okay, you know what? I'll give, like, how about I go on and I give you guys 10 more minutes, 20 more minutes? Like, how long are you guys gonna need? Because I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna still beat you no matter what you do. So Momo goes on to tell Turbo Granny that it's all she needs is 1 second. And Turbo Granny's like, huh? Like, that makes no sense. So Momo uses her psychic ability because a train is coming nearby, and it's a bullet train. It's one of those really fast trains. Hence why I say bullet. So Momo latches herself onto this train and takes her and Ken and jumps onto the train. So come to find out, Momo is to find out that Turbo Granny is to be this 100-kilometer granny, but if anything, this train is a little bit faster. So now the Mounted Spirit and Turbo Granny are chasing after Momo and Ken, and the Turbo Granny crab is to eventually jump onto the train and be like, ha ha ha, I still got you. And Momo is like, okay, well, yeah, I guess you're here, you're on this train. But Momo goes on and uses her psychic powers and latches on to the Turbo Granny Crab thing and says, hey, I don't have to go on, and I don't need to uh, beat you by getting to the finish line first. Like, I just need to stop you from going anywhere. And I'm going to beat you and I'm going to win. So yeah, so Momo uses her psychic powers to just stop the crab Turbo Granny dead in her tracks. And so we now have the grandmother that's basically at the finish line, at the point of the the point where uh the barrier is for Granny to be passed because she's out of the city limits. And so all of a sudden when this happens, we then have all the spirits that end up getting released from Turbo Granny, and we then cut to Ken and Momo getting off the train, and Momo is talking about how she wants crab. So the grandmother, Momo, and Ken make their way back to the tunnel, and they leave flowers there, and they talk about all the women who had been killed there and been left for dead, and giving us more of the backstory of Turbo Granny. So we then have at the grandmother's place them going on and eating crab, and Ken doesn't understand why they're going on and eating crab at a time like this for what they just went through. as well as also the two of them are kind of bickering back and forth uh, about the grandmother getting too many legs and so on and so forth. So Ken just starts bickering with them, and the grandmother starts mentioning to Ken, it's like, well, you know what, you're kind of bickering and you're starting to be a little bit of a bitch. Like, are you sure you still have your peen? Are you still have your wang now that you're back to normal? And so the grandmother is like, well, hey, how about I check? So she starts chasing him around the house. So the two of them make their way out of the house, and so Momo tells Ken, it's like, well, uh, like the reason why she was chasing you around the house is she thought you were depressed and she just wanted to have fun with you. So so they go on, they both say their goodbyes, and they're like, well, is this really goodbye, or is it just like goodbye for tonight? Like, what is it? So the further and further that both of them just continue to be like goodbye, bye 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 bye, goodbye bye 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 bye. So Momo goes on and looks at Ken and like, well, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. And then they're like, oh, so they will be friends. So we then cut to the end of this credits. It's all over. This review is now over. So yeah, so 2 hours and 11 minutes. Holy shit! I wish I could have gone under 2 hours. I'm sorry. This one went a little bit long. I don't know why. Um, Probably because there's a lot of details here. There's a lot to go over. I'm sure a lot of people are like, man, this took too long. Why would I go on and why would I listen to this? Uh, do whatever you want. Watch this, however. Watch this on Netflix. It's conveniently there. Uh, you don't have to check out this whole thing. I've told people in length that you don't have to do it, and I'm grateful for people going on and watching this content anyways. So by all means, check out the show. Don't check out the show. Um, know that this exists. Uh, do whatever you want. It's your life. Um, I would go on to say that I have fun doing this, and so if that means that people are going to subscribe to the channel, that's great. I'm happy. If it means that people are going to enjoy this content somehow, however they want to consume it, then that's great. Uh, if at some point I go on and uh, this channel goes on to finally at some point be monetized, there's going to be a lot of adjustments that I should probably do before that happens. But until then, like, I'm just doing whatever until uh, eventually that day comes. Because really, like, uh, kind of what I'm doing doesn't like it. It really just kind of it's. I know what I'm doing right now isn't as effective as what I did in the past, but then again, also, uh, I was way when I started this channel. I think I was a lot more better planned. I had a lot more options, and now I'm just kind of going through the A to B to C to D to well, hey, I haven't done this in a while. Let's try this kind of thing, and I'm very like much experimenting instead of going with the safe options. And hoping for the best. There was a lot of times where I'd go on and say, "It's like, well, yeah, I know this is a popular show," but there were some times where there was a lot of happy accidents also, where it's just like, okay, great, somebody really liked this. Um, that's great because like I always ever wanted to just have that be a big thing for the channel. and then I could justify, okay, I'm gonna make that a like a big multi-video thing for the channel. And that's what I wanted to do, was just to have something that a lot of people liked. And so it's crazy. There's one video right now that's like 50K views. I'm like, wow. Um, I really kind of wish that that actually meant anything. Well, like it. I mean, like it meant anything to like be towards like anywhere closer to monetization. That all I needed was just 500 uh plus people to just subscribe, and then I'd be done and just be monetized. Uh, but yeah, but oh well, it's like I'm grateful for anybody who decides to subscribe and watch these videos, even if it's for seemingly 10 to a minute or something or whatever. I whatever, however anybody wants to go on and digest this stuff. I'm just trying to do whatever I can keep going on to do to make this content more enticing for people and attractive to people. Besides what you're probably to see right here within this face, it's probably not to be attractive enough. But anyways, I always look at the end of these videos. I'm like, God, I am just stupid. I am stupid. Uh, like I just keep having to have that foot and mouth disease, even though that's probably a thing. But yeah, but I'm always to kind of at the end of this just be like, man, how is it that I'm just keep going at this? That I've been consistently keep doing this. Like at some point, I was to think that there was going to be one thing that was going to completely do me in. Um, and we're still here. We're still going. I'm still doing this. Like I thought that there would be like I wouldn't be able to come up with a way to make these thumbnails attractive enough, and then I'd come to find Timu. I'm like, oh, okay, now I can go on and find these items, and I could be able to make the thumbnails more interesting. And because most of this stuff is like all through my closet uh, that I'm using for thumbnails most of the time. Not, 80% of the time, 80% of the time, because a lot of times it's just like stuff that I just conveniently already had, and I was lucky about that. So, anyways, so I'm going to finish up Zombie 100 after this. That's what I've ultimately planned because I did like that show, and it seemed that there was a good handful of people that actually liked that, and I'm sure they'll be like, "Hey, man, when are you gonna finish that?" Um, yeah, like I want to get back to Power Rangers because it's been 3 some odd weeks to doing that, and then I wanted to do this because it was interesting to me, and so we're getting back into Zombie or Zom 100 after this, just to finish that up and just finally get to something where I start and finish something. Because there's a lot of times where I just kind of very much give up on things, and this may end up being one of them where I just there's a lot of times. And Jacksepticeye had gone on to just say this in one of his videos where he'd talk about how he had just gotten age restricted on a video. How like yeah, the first video does really well, but then after that, like everything downhill goes after. Like that's why I'm like, yeah, why do shows? Um why do a show when it's like yeah, the first video is going to do really well, but then there's just going to be no momentum after that. Um, but if anything, um, sometimes it's not all about the numbers. Because if anything, like I would go on to say, uh, since the beginning of here, a subscriber is a person to me. So you're a person. You're not just a sub. And a view is a person that took that time, and that's what I always want to just state consistently. Um, that it's not a numbers game to me. That it's like people took the time to hear this voice for X number of minatos. So I do appreciate it. So wherever that goes for whatever the heck this still is it a review channel anymore? Because I've gone on to do some comic book videos and I've done some collection stuff. Uh, I've tried to branch out and do other things than just reviews, but I just keep going back to this. Uh, Hopefully, at some point, uh, I'll go on and keep keep trying to do uh, some interesting bits of stuff on here. So I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, buddy.